Corey, I can't thank you enough for being on the CEO Global Network podcast. We were reminiscing a little bit about the last time that we were together, and it's been almost a year. It's hard to believe it's been a year since we were together.
Yeah. Yeah. Time goes by too quickly sometimes.
It goes by too quickly.
Yeah.
Just before we get started, before we start our conversation, I wanted to just let our listeners and the people that are watching, I just want to give them a quick thumbnail sketch on Corey Turner, and president of Spicers Canada for almost 15 years, Corey.
Yeah.
You've been with Spicers almost 31 years.
Yeah.
I noticed you started in the warehouse, Corey? I mean, from warehouse to president. That's amazing. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. You're on the board of National Paper Trade Association, the NPTA. You're a governor and board member, MS Canada, and you are a University of Calgary grad, as I recall, right? The University of Calgary.
You did your homework on me, John.
I did know. You did a little research on you. Yeah, 100%. Now, you and I first met through Yves Savoy.
We did.
You remember that? And Yves was the CEO of the MS Society of Canada at the time.
He was.
And I do believe that, you came to one of the speaker events that we had.
Yeah.
And I also remember that meeting with you in the Spicers boardroom, and we talked a lot about culture and your beliefs around culture. I'd really like to talk about that in the next few minutes that we have together, but I also want to let everybody know that it was in 2005, like 20 years ago, Corey, when you started your journey with MS. And, I'd really like to get your thoughts, your feelings around the impact that had on you and your leadership, because you're such a successful CEO. And, I've always admired you and looked up to you. And I'd love to know more about your journey and your journey around leadership.
Yeah. Well, look, first off, I appreciate you having me on. I mean, I guess we're at that point in my career where you get to reflect a little bit. And I find it kind of strange that people ask me for advice at this point in time, because I feel like yesterday was just yesterday. But I mean, the reality is it's been quite a remarkable journey, and you can't tell the story without talking about MS within it. So you're right. I mean, I started with this company. I started in a warehouse in Calgary. It was a summer job that kind of never ended. And I was grateful for the fact that I had some really good mentors along the way, guys that just opened doors and saw something in me way before I probably saw it in myself. And so by the time I got MS, which was in 2005, I was definitely on a fast track. I started in a warehouse. I was in a sales career, had success there. It transitioned me to California. I actually moved down there with my wife, ended up going to California, and I was down there, and the world was kind of your oyster at that point in time. I was starting a very successful career. And then in 2005, only 10 years into my journey with the company, I was diagnosed with MS. And so, you're in your early 30s. My wife was 6 months pregnant at the time when it happened. You don't get to pick the time. But sometimes the time picks you. And so, I was at this kind of intersection very, very quickly, which was, do I sit around and feel sorry for myself, or do I do something with it? And in fact, we had a vice president of HR at the time. He came down to California and he met with me, and he said, look, if you're interested in moving back to Canada, which is where I was from, we're here to help you. And I actually put him on a plane earlier, because I said, I'm not ready for that. And so, you get this diagnosis and you have a decision to make. And my decision was to have a really different mindset. And it was remarkable what kind of happened. There was this sense of focus, this sense of urgency. I was I think I was much more deliberate, and I think I was doing things with a lot more purpose. And I realized that the people around me were responding positively to that. And that really transitioned into a lot of opportunities. I went through 4 different promotions in a very quick succession, all while having this diagnosis. And it's a really regrettable, and it can be a very devastating condition. I was just really fortunate that the mindset was there for me to allow to proceed in a more positive way. And then that became fuel, not only for myself, but for others. In 2009, I was offered the opportunity to come back to Canada, and I came back, and people will remember that was deep into the financial crisis. And we were trying to fix the business in a lot of ways. We're trying to fix it through product and what we did and how we did within outside of our business, outside of our 4 walls. And I decided the best thing to do was to actually look at the business within our 4 walls and the culture and the organization and how we would make this a little different place to do business and a little bit different place for people to call home. And one of the first things I did was I created these core guiding principles.
Right.
And I said, we're gonna manage the way we do business and how we operate within our own four walls. And these were courage, value, simplicity, speed, ownership, excellence, empowerment. And these became really, really contagious within the organization. I don't think most people knew that in a lot of ways, these were far more personal than business. And so these became the blueprint by which we operated our business. And they really became the way we made decisions, how we interacted with each other, how we saw our clients, how we saw our customers, how we saw our suppliers, and started to build this community. We became much better around flexibility and adaptability. We became very, very good at change. And then also what was really powerful is we created a culture of vulnerability. Because if the leader can be vulnerable, then the people can be vulnerable. And when people are vulnerable and when people are in that mindset, they become bold. They take chances because they're comfortable that if the organization is a vulnerable organization, I can be vulnerable enough to make good change for the organization. 5 acquisitions, 32 real estate projects, brand consolidations, all of this stuff happened under the umbrella of these core guiding principles, which were driven out of my journey with MS. And so we wouldn't be the organization I don't think we are today without MS. Now, is there things I regret? For sure. There's things I regret. There's things I wish I could do. But I really kind of focus on the things I can do, not the things I can't do. And I think that becomes a really good example. And I think look, 30 years in, my focus is completely on being a good example to people that have conditions, not just MS, that you can translate that into a very, very meaningful career and have a really, hopefully, good positive impact on others.
Absolutely. You've had a tremendous impact, positive impact on others. Vulnerability, just to stay with that for a little bit longer, Corey, how has that impacted in sort of, beyond that? Like, does it impact into your customers and your suppliers? And, the culture is everywhere, isn't it?
It is. And I think by virtue of it, I think people feel that. And I
Yeah.
think, look, we're a reasonably big organization. We've got over
All right.
500 employees. We got 14 locations. We have a lot of resources and assets. I think what it does is it allows you to feel like a smaller company. And, most of our customers are small businesses. And I think it becomes relatable. And I think, I hope it does anyway. We're working hard that this is not a business with a Toronto-centric mindset. Nothing against Toronto, but,
No.
this is a big company. That's a big country. This is, multiple time zones and to cross it is a big journey. I've done it a lot of times, but you want this business to feel intimate.
Absolutely. Now, I got one last question for you, Corey. Then we're
Yeah.
going to wrap up. Okay. And it's amazing how the time flies here. But I mean, your journey is such an inspiration. And I think of a number of presidents and CEOs who are taking the seat for the first time. Is there anything else that you would sort of, you know, let them know, say to them as they kind of get into that chair as leading an organization like you have so successfully. Anything else in terms of, what you've learned from your journey that you'd want to share with them?
I think don't be afraid of change. Number one, I think change is maybe don't get addicted to change because I've been accused of that sometimes, but I wouldn't do that. But I think being bold is really important. But I also think similar to what we talked about earlier, I said, know what you stand for and stick to that. Be really, really committed to who you are as a person and also what your organization represent. We have not only core guiding principles, we have leadership expectations. And the two ones that really stand out to everybody, selflessness and unity. And I will tell you, we embed that into the organization. And if people are not demonstrating that, people get checked on that. People get called on that. But I think you got to think about not the products you sell, not the industries you're in. What is the organization that you represent? What do you want it to look and feel like? And I think if you really fixate and you focus on that, you'll deliver a really winning experience for everybody that's involved. Our staff, our suppliers, our customers, everybody's involved. They will understand that is really real stuff.
Corey, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. You know, the lessons learned from your journey are just outstanding, important lessons. Creating a vulnerable culture, overcoming adversity, the impact that it's had on you in terms of comfort in change, and embracing change and flexibility. Thank you so much for being with us, Corey. It's great to see you again, and we really appreciate you being with us.
John, I appreciate you having me on. Next time, give me an hour and a half. We could talk about it for a long time. So anyway, I
Well, do
appreciate the opportunity. I really do. Thank you so much for having me.
it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.